Hello and welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you are over the age of 40, I really want you to lean in and pay close attention today. Have you felt this specific kind of mental friction lately? You know, this nagging sense that your logical, tried and true way of solving problems just isn't mapping onto how the real world actually behaves anymore? Well, today we are going to unpack exactly why that happens. And honestly, it all comes down to an invisible framework that's shaping literally every thought you have. Let's get right into it.
It's a feeling we all share, right? Especially as we gain a bit more life experience. Why does it feel like society, our institutions, or even our own personal development are just running in endless, exhausting circles? Why does it feel like we're constantly stuck in gridlock? Okay, let's dive into this, because the answer actually isn't that the world is completely broken. The answer is that the map we're using to navigate it is fundamentally flawed.
The root of all this gridlock is what our source material brilliantly calls the horizontal trap. See, we think we're analyzing reality objectively, but in truth, we're running a really old, deeply ingrained software program. It's a cognitive schema that was installed in our brains way back in elementary school. We were taught this one very specific way to organize information, and we are still unconsciously trying to cram the entire incredibly complex universe into that exact same mold.
I mean, think back to chalkboard math. You can practically smell the chalk dust, right? The classic number line, you've got 0 right in the middle, to the left, negative numbers, to the right, positive. And look, it was perfect for surviving middle school algebra. But then we unconsciously started using this flat horizontal line for literally everything else. This simple two-dimensional image profoundly embedded itself into our brains, and we were basically trained to view the whole world on this flat axis.
We took that mechanical, horizontal structure and mistakenly applied it to highly abstract concepts. We put the past on the left and the future on the right. We put bad on the left and good on the right. We created this normative center, the so-called golden mean, and just decided everything to one side was a deficit and everything to the other was a gain. We are constantly forcing the vibrant, multidimensional reality of human existence into these flat, little horizontal boxes.
And that takes us to our first major concept, the generational gap in minds. This brings us to a massive aha realization. Why is this horizontal mindset creating such specific, intense friction for those of us over 40 today? Well, it comes down to the actual media that formed our developing brains. If you're over 40, your brain was literally wired by 2D paper. Think about physical filing cabinets, Dewey Decimal Systems, notebooks. Your baseline was flat. But the generation under 40? They grew up in 3D digital spaces, fluidly swiping, pinching, zooming through spatial data. Their baseline is vertical and multidimensional. So we're essentially running a 2D operating system in a 4D world, which creates this profound, invisible disconnect.
As the source material highlights so perfectly, bridging this gap is absolutely not about learning how to use the latest app. It is entirely about upgrading our actual mental framework to match reality. The over 40 generation must master this multidimensional way of thinking. We have to actively recognize our 2D paper-based biases and intentionally expand our minds to process the world in the spatial, fluid way it actually operates.
So, moving on to section 2, let's talk about particles and waves. To understand how to actually make this mental leap, we need to shift our focus to how we misunderstand the very fabric of our experiences. The source uses a really powerful metaphor from physics. First, let's look at the particle mindset. Rational, objectified, tangible. We take a complex situation, we isolate it, we label it, we put it in a box. We want hard facts, placed on a straight line. But this rigid, static way of processing completely misses the bigger picture. Now, contrast that with the wave mindset. Actual life events, our deepest human connections, and these profound societal shifts, they do not operate as isolated static dots on a grid. Not at all. They flow with emotional, vibrational, and experiential frequencies. We exist in a complex, interconnected, almost holographic universe. And when we only use our rational, particle logic, we completely miss the sweeping, experiential waves that actually drive human behavior and natural cycles. We need to be able to perceive both.
Which naturally leads us into section 3, real development instead of pyramids.
So how does this 2D particle mindset manifest in the real world? Honestly, it's the exact reason why our society, our institutions, and our politics constantly feel broken and hopelessly gridlocked. Look at our most heated societal debates. State versus market, right versus left, conservative versus liberal, centralized versus decentralized. We pour endless amounts of energy into these conflicts. And this brilliantly illustrates the real problem. These are entirely horizontal debates. They are just people fighting back and forth on the exact same flat, two-dimensional plane. We argue over who gets to stand in the middle or who gets to pull the line further to their side.
We tell ourselves that if we just push our side to victory, the whole system will magically be fixed, but the underlying flawed geometry of the system hasn't changed at all. As the source powerfully states, a different person stands on top of the pyramid, but the pyramid remains. Merely swapping sides horizontally or swapping leaders at the peak does absolutely nothing to evolve the structure itself.
So, the crucial point here is understanding what true verticality actually means. In our old 2D mindset, vertical just meant a taller pyramid of power who was on top oppressing whoever is on the bottom, a top-down command and control hierarchy. But true vertical evolution is something entirely different. It's about integration and elevated consciousness. Reaching a higher vertical level doesn't mean you're a superior human. It just means your framework is suddenly wide enough to integrate multiple, seemingly opposing viewpoints from the flat plane down below.
All right, let's bring it all together in Section 4, the four-dimensional spiral.
This brings us to the ultimate solution and the core realization for reshaping how you view your life and the world around you. It is time to step off the flat line, abandon the static pyramid entirely, and step into a new framework. First, we have to completely break the illusion of the number line. There is no true minus in biological life. You don't live, die, and then go into negative time to somehow work your way back to zero. Even sleep isn't negative time. It's a forward-moving, restorative phase. Time only moves forward. You are constantly progressing from the moment of birth.
Therefore, your life is not a point bouncing left and right on a static line. Your life is a continuous vector. A vector has direction and magnitude. You are consistently moving forward through time and experience. You literally cannot go backwards to a minus state. Think of it not as pacing back and forth in a hallway, but walking forward through the changing seasons. And as you move forward on this vector, you also experience the natural biological cycles of the Earth: days, nights, seasons, and years.
Okay, let's move to and see how this builds together into our final model. You take the flat horizontal line of our basic experiences. Then you add the vertical evolution of integrating those experiences with higher awareness. Finally, you combine that with your forward time vector and nature's cycles. And what do you get? You don't get a circle, and you don't get a straight line. You get a dynamic, four-dimensional spiral.
See, in a spiral, you are never just running in circles, even if it really feels like it sometimes. Yes, we return to the exact same core human themes again and again. We cycle through periods where we intensely focus on security, then freedom, then community, power, responsibility, identity. But because we are on a vertical, forward-moving spiral, every single time we loop back to the issue of freedom or responsibility, we are encountering it at a higher, more complex, more evolved level of consciousness. You aren't stuck. You are spiraling upward.
This changes absolutely everything about how we view progress. True development, whether for you personally or for society at large, isn't about defeating a horizontal enemy on a flat plane. Real social transcendence means transcending the common level of thinking itself. It means leaving the 2D number line and that rigid power pyramid behind entirely and recognizing the grand integrated spiral we are actually traveling on.
So I want to leave you with this thought-provoking challenge. When you face your next major hurdle, whether that's at work, in politics, or in your personal life, will you let your old paper-based schema drag you into another exhausting horizontal tug-of-war? Or are you ready to apply this 4D cognitive schema, step off the number line, and ride the spiral to a higher level of integration? The upgrade is waiting for you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep spiraling upward.